Let's explore the challenges of cloud computing. We're going to start off by taking a close look at control. What is the level of control that's available to us when adopting cloud services? So one of the major challenges that organizations face when transitioning to the cloud is the need to adapt to an environment where they may not have as much control over security policies, let alone physical access to resources. In a cloud environment, all of the underlying physical security is the responsibility of the cloud services provider. The cloud services provider makes available tools, services, and processes to the cloud services consumer that enables the cloud services consumer to secure their applications and their workloads. So in the cloud, there is a shared responsibility model, and the cloud services consumer needs to be very comfortable with the requirement to delegate some of the security controls to the cloud services provider. Next, we're going to take a look at the level of visibility that's available within a cloud environment. And from a visibility perspective, cloud services consumers need to be comfortable with the limited visibility that they may have with respect to certain policy enforcements and certain levels of controls. For example, when a cloud services consumer deletes resources from the cloud, they need to trust that their requests will be fulfilled by the cloud services provider without necessarily having physical access to or visibility into the storage systems that are used within the data center to store the data that may have been deleted. Next, we're going to take a look at manageability. It is very clear that data center services consumers do not have the ability to manage every single aspect of the cloud. For example, data center services consumers do not have physical access to the data centers within which cloud services are being delivered. As a result, they need to be comfortable with the shared responsibility model, whereby the underlying physical infrastructure is the sole responsibility of the data center services provider or the cloud services provider for that matter. And their responsibility lies in using the tools that are made available by the cloud services provider to secure their workloads and their data. From a governance perspective, it is important to remember that cloud services consumers have to trust and rely on cloud services providers' ability to meet the respective compliance and regulatory requirements. Compliance requirements are typically captured within service level agreements entered into between cloud services providers and consumers. Next, we're going to take a look at interoperability. Interoperability relates to the ability for services to interact seamlessly with services deployed on other platforms. Cloud services consumers must be very careful about using proprietary services, which may present challenges further down the road when there is a need for cloud services to interoperate with services running on other clouds or potentially within an on-premises environment. Let's explore compliance risks. From a compliance perspective, it is important to remember that there is a dependency on the cloud services provider to fulfill the relevant compliance obligations, given that the data and the applications are running on systems and infrastructure that is not under the direct control of the cloud services provider. Next, we're going to take a look at isolation failure. From an isolation failure perspective, it is important to note that most cloud services are virtualized. which means that the cloud infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, is not dedicated to a single cloud services consumer. Therefore, it is important to bear in mind the potential risks associated with using shared infrastructure. Let's explore the importance of boundaries in a cloud environment. In a hybrid environment where an on-premises network is connected to a virtual private cloud, the trust boundary is extended, and cloud services consumers need to be mindful of the additional risks that is presented from expanding the blast radius. Next, we're going to explore data protection. And from a data protection perspective, there's also a reliance on the cloud services provider to fulfill their obligations. For example, obligations to delete data when data has been deleted by the cloud services consumer. Let's consider the risks associated with the management interface. Cloud services are typically accessible via a portal. This portal is made available to cloud services consumers over the public internet, and therefore the risk of public exposure needs to be taken into account and mitigated. While it is important for us to be aware of these challenges, there are many mechanisms available in the cloud that enable us to mitigate all of the risks that we've presented in this section. So in subsequent modules, we're going to present risk mitigation mechanisms that adequately address the challenges that have been discussed.